process of dough and butter. We've got a lot of dough and butter going on here. We have 2 more laminated doughs coming up this semester. Does anybody know what they are? What are they? We have Danish and croissant coming up. Big difference, no yeast in our puff dough. So it's going to be our first laminated dough. So it's a 2-parter. You're going to be making a dough, and then we're making what is called a butter block, which in some cases is just butter, sometimes it's butter with a little bit of flour. But the dough is a real simple dough. It has flour, just a little bit of butter in it, maybe some salt for flavor, and then water. And you want your water to be cold. So for your flour, you'll see a lot of different formulas for puff dough. And oftentimes you'll see bread flour mixed with a little bit of cake flour. What we're trying to do is reduce the gluten that we get from the flour. We don't want too little because we want some structure there. But during our rolling process, we're going to be rolling out the dough and folding it and rolling it and folding it. We're going to be doing that several times. The rolling process develops gluten. So we're going to try to slightly underdevelop the gluten when we mix our dough, and then rely on all that rolling to develop the gluten. So if you come across formulas that are part bread flour with something else, that's the reason why. Okay. So we're going to have flour, we're going to have salt, and we're going to put these 2 in your mixer bowl. You're going to use the stand mixer, you're going to use the paddle attachment. The book has you dissolve the salt in the ice cold water. Problem with that is the water is too cold to dissolve the salt. So salt sticks down at the bottom, sinks down at the bottom. You pour your water into the mixer, salt stays in the container. So I want you to make that change on your formula. Throw the salt into the flour. That's what you're going to do. Now the water should be cold, colder than tap. So you want to get some water, throw some ice in it, chill a little bit, and then scale it off without ice in it. You don't want to be pouring ice in your dough. So cold water, why are we using cold water? As opposed to warm.
Keep the dough hard to handle it.
It's going to make the dough easier to handle if we keep it cold, and it's going to reduce our gluten development. Okay, if you have a choice of cold or warm water, you get better development with warm water. We want to keep our gluten down. So then there's going to be a little bit of flour in here. The flour should be kind of room temp-ish. So if it's, did I say flour? Mm-hmm. Butter, kind of room temp-ish. Catherine, can you pull 2 pounds of butter? No, pull more. Pull 6 pounds. 6 pounds. I won't be talking that long. We need butter for our butter block. Let's go ahead and pull 6 pounds. And then stand them up on a narrow end so that they can get some air circulation and chill faster. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so a little bit of fat goes in your dough, not a whole lot. Salt's going to be a flavor enhancer. Sometimes you'll see acid in the recipe. Oftentimes a French recipe will have a little bit of acid. That might be a little bit of lemon juice, might be a little bit of cream tartar. So why do you think you'd have acid in there? Tenderizing. Yeah. Our book does not call for any acid, so it's kind of a French thing. So we're going to use the paddle attachment to find out the dough hook develops too much gluten. We're going to save that when we get into our yeast toast. So paddle attachment, and we're going to make the dough, and then we're going to pat it out on a half-sheet pan and chill it for about 20 minutes before we start our rolling process. So making your dough. Throw the flour and the salt and your butter in the mixer bowl. Chunk up that butter. Let that mix a minute or 2. You want to have your butter completely mixed in. There's not enough butter in here to, kind of form a dough. It's just going to be broken up. It'd be like if you were cutting it in for biscuits, for example. But after it's mixed in, you really can't see that there's any butter in there. There's not a whole lot in that formula. Then with your mixer running, pour your water, and you're going to be on low. Pour your water in. It's going to mix, and you need to be careful of these little machines. If you mix a heavy dough at too high of a speed, you can burn out the motor. So you want to be on about a low to medium, but you want to be fast enough that the dough doesn't just hang onto the paddle and roll around like this. Okay, so sometimes if you just turn up one speed, your dough will get thrown off and it'll mix. So you'll probably have to stop a couple times and pull the dough off of your paddle and make sure that it's actually mixing in there. So your mixing time is going to be about 3 minutes. What you want is a smooth looking dough. If it's still rough like biscuit dough, hasn't mixed quite long enough. So you want it to look smooth. Keep watching it. If you have to keep stopping and pulling that dough off, throwing it in a bowl, keep doing that. But it should look somewhat smooth, and it should have a little bit of elasticity to it. It shouldn't just feel like biscuits. Then you'll take it out. You'll get a half sheet pan with a piece of parchment, a light dusting of flour, and your dusting flour is what? Bread flour. Bread flour is always your dusting flour. Light dusting of flour. Pat out your dough and kind of convince it that it wants to be a rectangle, and the size is on your lap. You won't get there initially. Probably your dough will probably fight a little bit. So get it as good as you can. Put plastic on it. Be sure to label it. Write the time on your paper and throw it in the fridge. We're going to give it 20 minutes. Ideally, you want to give it 30, but in class, we're going to trim some time. And then you're going to make the next step, which is going to be the butter block. And the butter block in our formula here has a little bit of flour in it. So it's a lot of butter, a little bit of flour. You can mix this in your machine. So you just mix the dough. The dough is pretty clean, and that it is going to clean your bowl. It's not going to be real sticky. So use the same bowl, the same paddle. Don't go wash it. Okay, so the butter should be a very firm room temp. Not soft, not real pliable, but not brittle. So firm room temp, chunk that up, throw that in, throw the flour in, and then ever so briefly mix that. All you're trying to do is incorporate the flour into the butter, and what the flour will do is make the butter a little more manageable when we roll it into our dough. So this mixing time is like seconds. It's like maybe 10 seconds. You do not want to cream. Don't cream till light fluffy. Just work that flour in is all you're doing. Your goal is to have your butter block and your dough be the same consistency. So if you overmix that butter, and butter will get really soft really fast. So it's just ever so briefly mixing in the flour.
So when you put the butter in the mixer, you put the flour in there?
Yes. So just throw the two in together. Put them both in and then turn your mixer on low. And just very briefly blend. And you'll have to stop and scrape. And the butter also will try to clump up on your paddle. So stop it and push it off and blend it. Okay, and then you're going to take the butter out of the mixer bowl and you're going to put it on a piece of plastic wrap, and then you're going to kind of pat it into, again, a rectangle. I'm going to tell you about the size, but you want to not work this a lot. You're going to be tempted. Students love to do this. They just keep rubbing the butter because it feels so good. So resist the temptation to do that. Put your butter out on the plastic, kind of pat it out, plastic on top, leave it alone. Okay? If you work it too much, it gets too soft. And then when you go to incorporate that into your dough and you roll it, the soft butter is going to squirt out. So it's real important. Can't stress this enough. The butter and the dough need to be the same consistency. If your butter's gotten too soft, you're working in a warm room or whatever, you can throw it in the fridge, but you don't want to get it brittle. Okay, so you kind of have to play with it. So then your next step is incorporating the butter into the dough. And there are several different techniques for this. If you look in your book, there's several different techniques. So the one we're going to use is kind of a simple technique that involves a threefold. So you're going to take the dough out of the fridge. It will have relaxed. It's going to be cooler than when you put it in. It's going to be easier to work with. You're going to lightly dust your bench. And when you roll your dough, I want you to roll the length of the dough with the length of your bench. This way. So the person doing the rolling needs to stand along the long edge of the bench and roll this direction. I'll give you some rolling tips when we get into lab. Put your dough out, roll it, and the term we use is pin it out, roll it out to the size indicated on your lap. Square off your corners as much as you can. When you roll out that dough, it's going to kind of want to look like that. So focus on your corners. You want to convince those corners that they want to be square. So you'll be using your hands a little bit to pat it and stretch it, use the rolling pin. You want to have an even thickness. It's important that you have an even thickness here. So you roll out your dough, you get your rectangle, and then the butter block is going to be put on the dough so that it covers 2/3 of your dough. Much better. And you're leaving about an inch margin here to prevent squirting out. So you put your butter block here. And then we're going to fold the dough from this end first over the butter and this end over the butter, so that's a 3-fold. So what it's going to look like is the white is your dough. There's your dough. This is not to scale. Okay. There's your dough. There's your butter block. And then this actually is a little, the butter's a little long here, but you get the idea. And then you're going to fold over the naked dough over onto the butter. And then you're going to fold the buttered dough on top. This is your first step in incorporating your butter. Okay, looks like that. If you don't fold it right, and if you fold the buttered dough onto the buttered dough, then what you end up with is a layer of dough, 2 layers of butter, and then dough and dough. Okay, so you want to alternate your layers. So we rolled out the dough on the table. We have folded. We've given this what we call a 3-fold. This is incorporating the butter. This step is incorporating the butter. Then we begin our turns. So our turns can be either 3 folds or 4 folds, and there's actually other types of turns that we're not even going to go into in this class. So your 2 basic ones, 3-fold or 4-fold. A 3-fold is sometimes called a simple turn, and a 4-fold is sometimes called a book fold. So your lab today, we're going to use the 4-fold method, and you're going to be giving your dough 4 folds with a rest in between. So the only 3 folds you're giving it is incorporating the butter. Okay? Okay, so here's your dough, has the butter in it. Now you give your dough a 90-degree turn, and if you look at this dough, there's an open short end, there's an open end, there's an open end, there's a closed end. So here's your dough. You're going to turn it so that the fold or the closed edge faces you and runs the length of the table. Then you're going to roll that dough out to the size specified in your lab. And depending on how much dough you're working with, that determines the size of your rectangle. Okay? But we don't want to get it any thinner than 1/4 of an inch and no thicker than 1/2 inch. So you're shooting somewhere in there. So you're going to roll your dough out again. So then you've rolled your dough out, so your dough looks like that. Now you're going to give it a book fold. So you want to eyeball the center. So one thing you can do is just pick up your dough, just kind of gently fold it over on itself, and fold it back so that you're marking the halfway point. If it's hard for you to eyeball halfway, just do that. Pick it up, gently fold it, fold it back. You're going to take the right edge, fold it to the center. You're going to take the left edge, fold it to the center. Leave yourself about a 1/4 inch gap. You don't want those 2 pieces of dough to actually touch. And then fold it over like here, and that's your book fold. Okay, so each end of the center, and then here. And now we need to chill it. We need to rest it. Before you throw it in the fridge, you want to take either your hands or your rolling pin and flatten this dough out a bit. You can gently press on it, like so, or you can use your rolling pin to kind of pound it. You don't want to throw a hunk of dough in the fridge like that and expect it to chill down to its core in 20 to 30 minutes. So we're going to flatten it. Before it goes into the fridge, you're going to put a fingerprint in one corner to indicate how many turns it has had. So a turn is rolling out the dough and then folding it. This has now had 1 turn. You do not count incorporating the butter as a turn. That does not count. That's strictly incorporating the butter. So one little fingerprint in the corner, cover it, write the time on your parchment, throw it in the fridge. We're shooting for 30 minutes, depends on how class time goes. We might kind of start backing down to 25 minutes. Bring it out after 30 minutes, throw it out on your bench with the fold. So once again, you've got 3 open edges and you've got a fold. The fold runs the length of the bench facing you. And then you're going to roll out your dough, and then you're going to give it another 4-fold, a book fold. 2 fingerprints in the corner, write the time on your paper, cover it with plastic. Use the same plastic wrap over and over. Don't throw it away each time. Into the fridge, 25, 30 minutes, bring it out, yada, 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 da, 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 3 fingers, da. Okay, like so. So that's puff pastry. That's what we will do today. So some of the things to watch. If you start rolling your dough and the butter has gotten too cold and it's really brittle, it will tear through your dough. So stop. Just stop and leave it there and let it warm up a bit. If you roll your dough and your butter is too soft, you see it start to ooze through, stop, throw it back in the fridge and chill it. If your butter does break through, then you want to patch it with a little bit of flour. Take some flour and put it on and kind of seal that. Keep looking at your dough when you roll it and lift it up and see if it's sticking. As you're rolling your dough, if you roll your dough and it doesn't move, it is stuck to the table. So each time you roll your dough, you want to feel some movement, you want to see some movement. Once it's stuck to the table, that's a really bad thing because then it's going to tear your dough. So keep checking your dough. If you feel like it's just not moving, if you see it's not moving, pull it back on itself, check your table. If you have some butter that has broken through and it's on your table, that butter is going to continue to attract more butter. So use your bench scraper, clean off your table, some new dusting flour, put your dough back, and roll. Anytime during that process, if it just gets too soft, feel free to throw it back in the fridge. It might only take 5 minutes for it to kind of firm up a little bit. So you got to keep feeling it. As you roll your dough, you want to use your fingers to check its thickness. So you want a little even thickness. So use your fingers like this. So you're going to roll out your dough and then you just kind of feel your dough. If you close your eyes and do that, you'll feel, oh, it's a lot thinner here and it's thicker here. So then stop rolling where it's thin and roll where it's thick. Okay? Keep your corners square. First few times you're going to really kind of have to convince those corners to be square. You won't get it with the rolling pin. So feel free to just kind of move your dough, talk to it, convince it to square off your corners. The problem, if you don't have squared off corners, is then you do not have even layering in your dough. So let's say you don't have a nice square corner here. When you fold your dough over this way, can you see that you are missing some dough in there? Okay, so you want to keep those corners square. You want to have even layers so that when you bake your puff pastry items, you get even rise. Once you're done with all those turns, you will have over 1,000 layers of dough butter, dough butter, dough butter. Amazing. Okay. And then after you have finished your dough, you normally want to give it a couple hours rest time before you start rolling it and making your items. So we always make it one day and then we use it the next day. And then also as you're rolling out your dough, kind of reach underneath it and just kind of flop it so that it can relax. You'll find that it rolls out and it's kind of stretchy and then you relax it and it springs back. So you want to keep relaxing it. As you roll, don't roll off the edge of your dough. Roll just up to the edge. If you roll off the edge with your rolling pin, you're going to have real thin edges. So just up to the edge. You want to cover all of your dough as you're rolling. And then when we get into lab, I'll do some demos with the rolling pin. What you want for a rolling pin today is a heavy rolling pin. So we've got several different kinds. You have dowel rolling pins. You don't want that. It's too much work on your wrist. You want to save that for a lighter dough. You want the big, heavy rolling pins like that. Okay? Okay, these rolling pins are expensive. They're really expensive. A good rolling pin can run you easily $60. So you want to, treat it like it was your expensive knife.
68.
68, right there. So, care of your rolling pin. One of the things to be really careful with on these tables is that I've seen rolling pins roll off the tables onto the floor and the handles break. So keep a towel on your table, put your rolling pin on your towel so it can't roll off. Rolling pins need to be clean. If you take take a rolling pin down from up there and it has dough on it, that dough is gonna harden and it's really hard to get off. You always wanna clean your rolling pin before you put it back. You never, ever, 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 ever put your rolling pin in a sink of water. First thing you're gonna do is try to wipe it off with a dry towel. If that doesn't get everything off, then use a slightly damp towel and wipe it down. If that doesn't get it, use your plastic hand scraper to scrape off any dough that you can't get off with a towel. Don't use your metal bench scraper. If you chip your rolling pin, then that little chip area tends to attract dough, and it will always attract dough. Don't use your rolling pin for cracking nuts or anything like that. The rolling pins they're more fragile than they look. They look like they're pretty sturdy, but they're more fragile than they look. So don't go cracking things with them. Don't let them fall on the floor. Don't put them in the sink. Throw them in the sink. There's a metal ball bearing mechanism inside that can rust, and then they don't roll. We have one rolling pin here that just will not roll because it's rusted inside. Okay. Also, if you feel these rolling pins are nice and smooth, once they go into the sink and sit there, then the grain is raised, and then they get rough. And when your pin is rough, it's going to attract dough. So you really need to treat those like you would your chef's knife. Okay, questions? We're going to have 5 groups today, and I don't know if that plug is working yet. So we want to try that first off, otherwise we can double up on tables. So everybody, let's see. Matthew is not here today. Right. We had 4 groups last time, right?